From the Fans Talk Podcast family at fanstalkpodcast.com, this is episode 38 of Fans Talk TNA. This week we'll cover the July 15th episode of Impact Wrestling on Destination America, as well as the rest of the news and notes that happened this week. My name is Nick, and once again, I'm flying solo. Schedules just did not align, the stars are not aligned, so, no Garvin this week. Sorry, guys. If you're new to this conversation, what we're doing is recapping the week that was in TNA. For this week, as I'm alone, it's just going to be a one-man review. So I'm going to talk about what I liked and didn't like, and I'm going to give you an honest reaction to this week's Impact Wrestling. So let's get started. First and foremost, let's get the elephant out of the way. This is the unveiling of the new authority figure. So Dixie walked out, apologized to everybody, and she introduced Bully Ray as our new authority figure. He basically recounted what went on to get him there, the phone call with Dixie, how he believes that Dixie has changed, that she is now, to use his words, legitimate, and he basically rallied the locker room. He also told EC3 that he's going to face the winner of a 20-man battle royal in a title match. We also had some backstage segments with Bully, powwowing with some of the wrestlers, namely Rockstar Spud, Kurt Angle, and also EC3. A lot of laying down the law. There's also some motivational stuff, even with EC3, which kind of surprised me a little bit. If you listen to Fans Talk Lucha, you'll hear Garvin and his wife talk about how they kind of see Dario Cueto as more of a motivational figure than an evil boss. And I got a little bit of that vibe with Bully Ray. A lot less authoritarian, tyrannical figure than I might have guessed, with Bully as the man in charge. So that was kind of nice to see. Moving on from that, we've got the X Division. We had a 4-way match for the X Division Championship. It was Grado versus DJZ versus Rockstar Spud versus Tigre Uno. Tigre Uno won the match and retained his title. I enjoyed this match personally. I was really impressed by Grado, the way he carried himself. He doesn't have that varied a moveset, but what he does have, he really thinks about how to use it, and I think he presents creative ways to do so. It's obvious that the crowd is warming up to him more and more as he shows up and wrestles more often. I don't really know who I'd like to see him have a program with most. Obviously, he and Rockstar Spud worked well together, but I don't really see them feuding. I think he could do really well with a feud against DJZ if DJZ were ever to turn back to heel. It would have been really interesting to see him have some matches with Low Key, just given they are total opposites in just about every way. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more. Spud was good, DJZ was good, Tigre Uno, excellent athlete, excellent champion. So yeah, that's really all there is to say about that. In the low to mid card range, we didn't really have any matches, but we did get some aftermath from last week when Bram basically brutalized Anderson. So TNA sat down with Anderson and asked him what his plans were going forward, what was his thought process. And Anderson talked a lot about his career, how proud he was of what he had accomplished. And really, if this was the end, he could retire happy. But he also said that if he did continue the fight with Bram, it was going to get dark, it was going to get ugly, and it wasn't going to end well for anybody. Anderson versus Bram could be a good feud. Anderson talks well, Bram talks reasonably well, and they're both good workers. It's a good way to keep Anderson out of the top title picture, which I think we need to do that for a while, because he went on with EC3 for a good length of time, and we need a little bit of separation there. So this could be good for both guys. And I fully expect that we are going to go to that dark place, that Anderson is going to dig deep in order to fight back against Bram. So it should be good stuff. Looking at the active feuds going on, we still got Bros Turned Foes going on. Jesse versus Robbie. Magnus versus Storm. We are getting a match in a couple weeks, that mixed tag team match. So I don't know if we're going to be seeing the end of that in 2 weeks, or if that's just going to be another chapter in the ongoing saga, but we'll see. Eric Young versus Chris Melendez. We got a little bit of taste of that with later events in the show, which we'll get to in just a minute. And now like I said, we got Anderson versus Bram. Moving on to the Knockouts division. We had a title match, and Taryn Terrell has been dethroned. Brooke is now your new 3-time Knockouts champion. I'm not really excited about this, to be honest. Brooke is a good wrestler. I don't like where her character is gone, or at least how it's being presented, but she should be a good champion. It's just, to me, it seems like she was more filler until Gail Kim could be brought back. And Gail Kim was brought back in the same night. She basically eliminated Jade and Marty Bell from consideration so that they wouldn't interfere in the match anymore. And I get why Gail would want any excuse to get the belt off of Taryn, but I don't understand why she's helping somebody else become champion rather than taking the belt herself. So hopefully we get some explanation in the next couple of weeks. But right now, Brooke should be putting on good matches going forward, so I can live with what happened. I just question the reasoning of this decision. But yeah, like I said, should be good moving forward. As far as active feuds go, we still got the Dollhouse versus Gail Kim and Brooke. Kong as well. I don't know if Rebel's going to make another appearance, but just given her past presence in matters here, it's possible. We've also still got Velvet Sky versus the other former Beautiful People, Angelina Love and Madison Rayne. So I don't necessarily know if that will be a continuing feud, though. Just given that Velvet has beaten Angelina and Madison fairly definitively. So it could be possible that she's going to move on to Knockouts title contention, especially since the title has changed hands. No tag team action this week. I expect we'll be getting that next week, since the tag team scene and the X Division scene seem to be on a flip-flop basis. You get one week and you get the other the next week, and then rinse and repeat. Moving on to the world title race. Of the 20 men that entered the Battle Royal, Drew Galloway was the last man standing. MVP and Eric Young were in there as well when everything went down, and they seemed to be working together pretty well to try and eliminate Drew, but when MVP was putting Drew over the top rope, EY stabbed him in the back and eliminated MVP. Drew fought back inside the ring and eventually eliminated EY. So Drew Galloway went on to fight EC3 for the world title. In the ensuing match, Tyrus got involved as per usual. He's been doing a better job of that lately, getting involved and making it interesting, making it a little more creative. And I did like the little touch he had after I believe he knocked Drew Galloway into the ring post and brutalized him a bit more. And when he was done with that, he looked at the camera as I get the camera out of my face. So I enjoy any time Tyrus is speaking and showing us his character. So that was good. Eli Drake eventually came out to even things up, to eliminate the interference from Tyrus. And the match went on. We had some pretty good back and forth from both guys, Galloway and Carter. But eventually, there was a ref bump, as has been the pattern with EC3's matches. And Tyrus got involved inside the ring. Eli Drake climbed inside and started swinging his crutch to back off Tyrus. Galloway backed Eli off to face Tyrus himself, and Eli hit Galloway in the back with his crutch. He then threw the crutch down and jumped out of the ring, landing on both feet. So apparently, ever since the dissolution of the Rising, Eli Drake has been playing us all for fools and just biding his time to stab Galloway in the back. I have no idea why. I expect we'll get an explanation next week, but I love it. Eli Drake strikes me as a natural heel. He's a great talker, and he looks to be at least a competent wrestler. It's really hard to tell because we haven't really seen him wrestle all that much since his debut. But now that he's turned on Galloway, I expect we're going to be getting a lot more wrestling out of Eli Drake pretty soon. And yeah, that makes me really happy because it's going to be a new guy that we haven't seen much of, and he's going to be bringing something fresh to Impact. So I don't see how there's any downside to this. Active feuds in the world title race. obviously we got EC3 versus Drew Galloway. I doubt Galloway is going to be deterred from his pursuit of gold by this. Anderson has moved out of the world title contention. Matt Hardy is still kind of in there by dint of his challenge last week, his demand for a match against EC3. Other potential contenders that you could have, Lashley is one. It's kind of up in the air. He may or may not decide to focus on Tyrus. It's kind of hard to tell right now. Also, Angle does have a rematch in the bag. When he and Bully Ray talked, it was to determine that the rematch he exercised last week, officially, it never happened. So he's still got a contractually obligated rematch that he will take advantage of once he comes back from his neck surgery. And with that, let's move on to the news and notice that happened this week. Again, Angle will be out for surgery. And the news was he has identified a benign tumor in his neck. His doctor identified it, rather. So he's going to be going away to get that taken care of. It seems pretty obvious that he's coming back, though. Both from what he said out of the ring, out of kayfabe, and in kayfabe. So that's good. Also, a little more drama with TNA behind the scenes. More of a tempest in a teapot than anything else, in my opinion, but everybody's talking about it, so might as well make mention of it. Hernandez will no longer be appearing on Impact. And the reason for that is, essentially, Lucha Underground is invoking the contract that they have with Hernandez, where they have first call on him for any wrestling while they're taping. Apparently, somebody told the TNA officials that Hernandez was a free agent and available for booking. And so they acted on that information. When Hernandez started showing up, Lucha Underground officials back there got in contact with TNA and said, wait, no, this isn't cool. He's contracted with us and we need him for tapings. Allegedly, TNA asked if they could still use the footage they had taped and compensate Lucha Underground in some way. I don't know what that would have been, with monetarily or with, I don't know, maybe a talent exchange or some such deal. But whatever it was, Lucha Underground turned them down, and so TNA is removing that footage with Hernandez. That's why we got the Slammiversary replay on this week's Impact of the non-sanctioned match between James Storm and Magnus, and supposedly we're going to be getting more stuff like that. Either replays from Slammiversary, possibly matches taped for Explosion, possibly more content taped as weeks go by to replace it. Who knows? The reason I consider this a tempest in a teapot is a lot of people are making the statement that TNA should have known better. They should have checked with Lucha Underground first. They should have done this, done that, and all fault lies with them. First of all, if you know anything about wrestling outside of mainstream TV, you know how indie wrestlers work. They ask the promoters for bookings, and the promoters ask the wrestlers if they're available. That's how that works. Promoters don't check with other promoters for a wrestler's availability, because there are hundreds of indie promotions out there that a wrestler could work for, and it's just plain ridiculous to expect them to ask everybody. Yes, Lucha Underground has first call on Hernandez's time, but that's when they're taping. To my knowledge, they have not announced a taping for a second season. They have not released a schedule at any rate. And I don't expect TNA to know Lucha Underground's schedule. I don't expect Lucha Underground to know TNA's schedule. And Hernandez isn't bound contractually to work just for Lucha Underground. He is technically an indie worker. He works other promotions, so to expect TNA to go around to every potential promoter that Hernandez could work for and ask them if he's free is ridiculous to me. I think it was on Hernandez to disclose his schedule and anything that could prevent him from working. If there's any truth to the report that it was a TNA wrestler that told TNA officials that Hernandez was free, I think he might share some of the blame for that. But ultimately, I don't see how TNA is solely at fault for this. And personally, I think it's ridiculous to make that claim. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I said more than enough on that. That's the end of the news and notes segment. And sorry to end on that controversial and ranty note, but that's really all we've got time for as far as Impact goes. Now, I do have a win and fail of the week from Impact, so let's go ahead and get into that. First of all, my win. I've got a couple. The first is Eli Drake's heel turn. I already mentioned how much I love that. I'm expecting good things from Eli Drake. Also, I like Bully Ray as the GM figure. I think he did a good job with it. I think he presents an interesting spin on the traditional role, where he's not exactly the naive face GM that you would expect from that sort of character, but he is incorporating some of the more motivational, rallying, rah-rah type of stuff in his addresses to the wrestlers. So, it's an interesting spin, it's an interesting take on the character role, and I dig it. I'm gonna give my fail to Brooke as Knockouts champ. Not so much because it's a failure of booking, it's just, I don't get the decision, I don't understand the reasoning behind that. I'm hopeful that they will explain that and, give us a reason for why that happened, why Gail Kim wasn't the one to do it. But, yeah, I'm not real excited about the prospect as of yet, from a storyline perspective. As far as next week goes, we're gonna find out who gets inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame. We had some replays this week of past inductees, namely Sting, Kurt Angle, and Team 3D. I will be incredibly surprised if it's anybody but Jeff Jarrett, to be honest. Just given the fact that he spent a number of weeks on TV, either wrestling or talking with Mike Tenay. They've already made him the King of the Mountain champion, so I think piling on with a TNA Hall of Fame induction would be a little much. It could be construed as sort of ass-kissy, but really, nobody else makes more sense at this juncture, in my opinion. Also next week, Tigre Uno is going to be talking Donald Trump. If you haven't seen the news, not only is Donald Trump a presidential candidate for the Republican Party, he's also kind of a racist. He said a lot of inflammatory things about Mexicans, what they do in the country, who they are, etc., etc. And Tigre Uno said a few things about that on Twitter. And so I expect we're going to be getting more of the same in this address next week. Should be interesting at the very least. Nothing good has really come of this sort of thing when wrestlers take something that a public figure has said and address it on air. But I don't really see how this could bite TNA in the ass. Not when it's somebody like Donald Trump that doesn't really carry a lot of credibility with a lot of people. So it's a pop culture reference. Maybe this draws some attention to TNA that otherwise might not have had, which at this point could definitely be a good thing. So we'll see. Also, not necessarily next week, but the week after, we're getting the mixed tag match between James Storm and his unnamed partner versus Magnus and Mickie James. Storm said that his partner was somebody that was very close to Mickie, so that kind of narrows the field, I think. And I've got two names that might be a partner. The first name, I'm not necessarily sure how close she is to Mickie James, but there is a lot of history between her and James Storm, and that's Jackie Moore. I'm not even sure how active a wrestler she is anymore, but she showed up on Impact a couple years ago, at least a couple years ago, and she looked pretty good in her tag team matches with ODB. So, you could definitely do a lot worse. The other name I'm thinking of is a return by Tara. Those two are very close outside of wrestling. If you follow either one on Twitter, they're always talking back and forth. So yeah, Jackie Moore or Tara. Either way, I don't think you can go wrong. They both would be a welcome return to the Knockouts division. And yeah, that's all we have time for on this edition of Fans Talk TNA. The conversation doesn't have to stop with me though. You could go join us over on YouTube. We've been getting a lot of interaction over there with our various shows. So please let us know what you think of the show. How badly you want Garvin back. Anything of that nature. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, G+, and Instagram. And you can find all those links on fanstalktna.com. So for my Missing in Action partner, Garvin, this is Nick, and we'll see you next week.